that can be driven autonomously, and to take the human out of the equation can be much safer than a car driven by humans.
According to Mothers Against Drunk Driving, 94% of fatal crashes in the country are caused by human error.
And unfortunately, drunk driving remains the biggest killer on the highway. Over 10,000 people were killed due to a drunk driver, and that's .08 or above last year. So we know that we have a lot of work to do. We're really proud that they're going to be displaying our red ribbons on their autonomous vehicles this year.
I'm Chris Woodward.
As the first wave of the Central American migrant caravan arrived in Tijuana, Mexico, Chief Patrol Agent Rodney Scott of the San Diego sector told Fox and Friends how his team is working to reinforce the wall and how he plans to handle migrants who manage to make it across illegally.
We've got nearly 8 miles of new border wall constructed here in San Diego. That construction is ongoing, so that creates some vulnerabilities for us, but that's what Department of Defense has been helping us put in place. I have a great relationship with the U.S. Attorney here, though, and anybody that crosses a border between the ports of entry that's amenable to prosecution, we will charge them with illegally entering the United States.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. We desire to be a movement of time tellers. In 1 Chronicles 12:32 it says, the sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the time, to know what Israel ought to do. In these perilous times, God is raising up a people of discernment who will see, pray, and act. We sound the alarm as watchmen. We cry aloud that God's people may be activated for his service. Join the movement at urbanfamilytalk.com.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We have now completed the election. We've completed the count. We've completed the recount. And it's time for Governor Scott to assume the duties.
The president has said there's no Russia collusion, and he's also said that he's complying, and he is with his attorneys.
President Trump is not going to fire Mueller. Mueller's going to be allowed to do his job.
It's very important to note that the people who promised they were going to frog march Donald Trump out of the White House because of Russia collusion 2 years ago are now belly aching about something else.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome to the program. Yeah, Kellyanne Conway, I love her straight, no chaser takes on the way people perceive her boss. It's amazing. It's pretty amazing. So what do we have today on the show? Well, of course, we're going to get into a little bit of A.G. Whitaker. He's acting Attorney General Whitaker. And the Mueller investigation with Gayle Trotter, who is an attorney, columnist, and political analyst. She's a fantastic guest. She's going to be on with us today to discuss the kind of legal aspects and ramifications. And, you know, I'm not a lawyer, don't play one on TV, but I greatly respect those who practice law, especially those on the right side of the political spectrum who can bring this analysis to us on the show. So we're going to be greatly appreciating her coming on. And we're going to talk about Acosta's hard pass and the stunt they've been able to pull off to convince this judge that somehow one specific person has a right to be in the White House as opposed to unfettered access by the press, which CNN already enjoys because they are hard pass holders to the tune of 50. Yeah, they have 50 hard passes. And I don't understand why the judge didn't take that into consideration. Why is Jim Acosta specifically, why does he have a right to be in the White House? Because it brings up the question, why don't I have a right to be there? I am an American citizen. I am a member of the press corps. Why don't I have a right to be there? It's a really interesting phenomenon that we're experiencing here. So, yeah, we've got that going on. And then, of course, former CNN legend Larry King has actually weighed in on what he thinks about what's going on there. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I really, really felt a sense of anger this morning when I found out that Jim Acosta had the right to be in the White House and that he has to be given his White House press pass back. Now, I don't think this is going to hold. They're saying he has to have it back while they adjudicate the case, but it still sets a horrible precedent. And there have to be rules of conduct for anyone who's going to be in any space. Like, I can't go to my workplace down to American Family Radio and behave in any way that I want. I can't go into the office building and accost the person who is in charge of the whole, the whole show. Like, and I don't mean my program, but the whole of the building there. I can't just run around in there and do whatever I want. There are rules of conduct that I have to abide by. And some of it is just common decency, that it's not anything that's written down anywhere. And some of it's actual things that are in my contract. Now, this is not a contractual relationship between Jim Acosta and the White House. There's so much more to this than just, hey, I'm Jim Acosta, I have a right to be here. But it sets a horrible precedent. Imagine what we're teaching teenagers and young professionals all across the country who, up to this moment, have refrained and withheld their own desire to yell and speak out of turn, to kind of rush into spaces, to disrespect public officials or those who are in authority. You guys all know that I'm the biggest consent of the governed chick you're going to find this side of the Rockies. Like, I am that person. I believe the president is our employee and every one of the rest of them. But there is something outrageous about saying, because the president works for the people of the United States, I can stand up, I can hog the microphone, I can yell at him, I can rudely debate him in a forum where this is not a presidential debate. It's not a debate of any kind. It is a press conference where everyone there is there at the leisure of the White House and the White House press, White House correspondents, people. It's a relationship. But there is just not any reason. There is no justification for the type of rude behavior we've seen from Jim Acosta, where he has demanded that Sarah Huckabee Sanders repeat after him. You guys have seen it. None of these things are new to you. If you pay any attention at all, you know that he has routinely told Sarah Huckabee Sanders, how dare you, or don't you feel like you should say right now? And then he'll give her a sentence to say, and if she doesn't repeat it, he'll just keep pushing back. It's so argumentative, so unprofessional, so rude. It's worse than the treatment that people get when a seasoned attorney says, permission to treat this as a hostile witness. Even attorneys who are in hostile witness mode don't go at people the way Jim Acosta goes at Sarah Huckabee Sanders and the way he went at the president of the United States. And so there's a sense of shame, but there's also a sense of where are the other journalists yelling out to separate themselves off? You guys have all seen this. I mean, I've had it happen to me where when that whole thing with the St. Louis Post-Dispatch was going on, I had certain people in my life who they really needed to make sure that people knew that they weren't a part of this thing. I was innocent. I was being slandered in public, and I had people who were pretty openly saying, well, I don't believe in everything she believes in. In other words, if she's going down, she's going to go down on her own. I'm not a part of that flaming vessel. Now, obviously, if that's the way you feel, please be open about it. Then I know you're not on my corner. I know you're not a friend. I actually enjoy it when people show me their real face. I prefer it. I hate it when I've spent time with someone and I've thought that they were, if not a friend, just a cordial acquaintance, only to find out later that they hate my guts. I prefer the open hatred and the truth. So in that way, Jim Acosta is totally above board. But there still has to be a limit to what you as a decent person would permit yourself to engage in. And he doesn't seem to have a limit, so he needs external limits placed upon him. And that is what the revocation of his hard pass was about. Well, really, it was a suspension. Remember, they didn't revoke it. They suspended it. So I don't understand this judge's ruling. I don't. There is no justification for saying he is owed a place within the White House briefing room. It would serve him right if they didn't have another briefing until he was permanently revoked. It would also serve him right if they stationed 2 armed Capitol Police officers near him at all times, just in case he decides to jump froggy and not relinquish his opportunity to answer a question. It would also serve him right if CNN, the entire CNN press group, were removed from the first 5 rows. They were placed on the back row so that if they want to ask a question, if they raise their hand and take the secondary and tertiary treatment that most journalists get, because the first 2 rows are reserved for these quote-unquote major news agencies, which is in and of itself, again, we're deferring to people who've already been there, who've been in the room, people who have enough money to buy the spaces, people who have enough money that they don't feel like they're accountable to the actual individuals who are running the press briefing. They're guests in that space. And I know people are currently leftists are saying, well, it's the people's house and Trump doesn't even have a right to be there. Actually, he's a duly elected president of the United States, and his representatives, namely Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Hogan Gidley and the others, they do have a right to be in that space. They've been sent there by the people of the United States, whether you voted for Trump or not. It's the same as when I didn't want to see Barack Obama up there, Pakistan, and, you know, slow jamming the news at night, treating the presidency as if it was some elaborate pathway to celebrity. But we still had that going on. No one said that he didn't have a right to be in that house. So this is, I don't understand it. I don't understand this ruling. And maybe later, in a couple of weeks, whenever everything is adjudicated, it will become clear why the judge made this decision. But this guy is, yes, you heard it right, a Trump appointee, and he let this happen. I'm sorry, it's just disturbing. It's totally disturbing. So we're going to get to our daily confession in just a sec. We're going to kind of flip it. Let's finish out this conversation. I want to listen to this. Larry King, who he's never been known for pulling punches or mincing words. He was in an interview with Law and Crime. They have this new interview show that they do. It's over at Media Matter. No, not Media Matters. Mediaite.com. And it's a whole new thing that they've launched over there. Mr. Abrams launched this thing so that they could have full news coverage. It's still pretty lefty, but they've been doing some interesting videos, and this was one of them. So you've got the Law and Crime blog and TV guy interviewing Larry King, and they're in person at a table, seated together, chatting. And Larry King was kind of he was really easygoing, and he was really criticizing his former employer. And it has to be a letdown for him. I'll just say this: it has to be a letdown for Larry King, and here's why. Because Larry King was a part of CNN back when it was the glory days, back when if there was any breaking news internationally, you saw it on CNN. If there was anything that was worthy of reporting stateside or around the globe, it was CNN who had a person on the ground reporting it to you. Bombs blowing up in the background, people getting hauled away in handcuffs, ground shaking, hurricane winds going sideways. The reporter on the spot was from CNN. And they were not only well respected, but I felt a sense of gratitude towards them back in those days because they did such great reporting. I didn't know any better, obviously, because that was the beginning of cable news. And that was our expectation. The bar was set high by what was then cable news network, CNN, the James Earl Jones CNN. Listen to Larry King talk about them not being a newswork now. It's number 2.
The terrible part to me is after all those years at CNN and now is to see CNN has become, as is Fox and MSNBC, Trump networks. There's the anti-Trump network, the partially anti-Trump network, and the pro-Trump network. But they're not news networks. They're not news networks. They do pundits. A typical CNN show is 8 guests. He had opinion, he has opinion, he has opinion. Like I was watching one day and there was terrible storms in the east. It wasn't a hurricane, but there's really bad weather in the east. Roads were clogged. And I had to wait till the CBS News at 6:30 to see that story. So they stopped doing news. My definition is a news organization leads. I've always worked under that premise, that a news organization leads the news, doesn't follow the news. If you want.
And so, unlike opinion shows, of which this is one, where we see what's going on and we report on that, we talk about it, we interview people about it, we analyze and dissect what is happening in this country, the news, the culture, the politics, the Christian worldview. We comment on that. We provide insight on those things, not the same as what you're expecting when you tune into CNN. And when he says, you know, each hour is basically 8 opinion guests, and all of them are anti-Trump, even the ones who are Republicans. And if you go on there and you're not anti-Trump, as I've done many times in the past, I'm not even given a chance to express the anti-Trump perspective without then being personally attacked for almost anything. Honestly, it's not even legitimate attacks. It's just, well, what you're saying isn't true, you know, which it's easily proven whether or not I'm telling the truth. Well, you're just saying that because you're in the sunken place. That's what a CNN contributor said to me. It's sad you're in the sunken place. Now, if you are sitting in the audience right now and you just heard me say sunken place and you have no idea what it is, we were in the same boat up until I actually knew what it was about 6 months before she said it to me. So if you're not someone who normally deals in the vernacular, who regularly trades in shibboleths and you kind of regionally specific put downs, in other words, you don't speak slang, then we're the same folk. We could link arms. We're into speaking good English. But you are not the target audience for CNN. CNN's target audience is people who regularly say stuff like that and understand it and want to see guests put each other down, want to see sexual innuendo and the meanest kinds of low base insults lobbed at not just guests on the program, but also at the president. And for that to be done to you on a regular basis, and then when they invite you back, you're supposed to say, thank you, ma'am. May I have another? Yes, may I come back on and allow one of your guests to say I'm in a sunken place? I'd love to hear someone insult me in that way. Yeah, because it takes a lot of time to do one of those hits. You know, you're on for 7 minutes, or maybe they have you on for 2 segments, but, you know, depends on what their segment is and what they want you on for. You might sit there. You might be on in the first segment, then you might wait for 40 minutes and be on in the last segment. So you're on the actual television for 6-8 minutes, and you get there. Just bear with me here. You're there for a whole hour. You're on TV for maybe 8 minutes, and the whole time you've been on, you've been insulted. Literally told off by strangers, people who don't even appreciate good English. College-educated folks. That's CNN. Now, I know he was ripping into Fox, too, and that's his own opinion. He's welcome to it, but you don't hear people getting routinely, like, insulted and using slang on Fox News. You just don't. All right. We are going to be right back with Gayle Trotter right after this.
Every day in preborn centers across the country, young women in crisis find refuge. Here's Roxy, nurse director for preborn at the Crisis Pregnancy Center in Southern California.
A lot of them come to us and they feel rejected, they feel alone, they're in a crisis situation, they don't know what to do, they don't know where to start. We believe that sharing the compassionate love of Jesus Christ is what really makes what we do work.
Through love and compassion, young women facing tough situations get to meet Jesus Christ and their unborn baby on ultrasound.
And I got to hear and see my baby for the first time. Hearing the heartbeat made me cry, and it was certain that I was going to keep my baby forever.
For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds, and you'll receive a story and a picture of babies' lives that were spared. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. Or go to preborn.com.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. Some time ago, Karen and I were at a dinner party. As we were leaving the party, a couple who lived near us said that they had gotten lost on their way to this home. They wanted to follow us back to our community. I said, it's a little tricky coming out of here, and there's a lot of traffic, so stay close to us. As we were driving, however, they fell further and further behind. Traffic started getting in between us, and unfortunately, they got lost again. That reminds me, we need to stay close to the one we're following, or we too will get lost. Sometimes we're following too far behind the Lord, and traffic is getting in between us. How we respond to God's leading in our lives makes all the difference. There's a very important word for us in Joshua chapter 3, verses 3 and 5. They're getting ready to cross the Jordan River into the Promised Land. When you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God with the Levitical priests carrying it, then you shall set out from your place and go after it. Down to verse 5. Then Joshua said to the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. When we're on mission with God, on God's mission, we need to keep in mind 2 very important things. Number 1, follow. Go where he is leading. Get it in gear. Then secondly, consecrate yourself. Make sure your life is clean. Be who God has called you to be. God wants to use clean, prepared vessels. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. Stay close to the one you're following, or you'll get lost. In the words of Henry Blackaby, you can't go with God and stay where you are. Stay close to God and go where he leads.
Thanks, Crawford, and thank you for listening to today's Legacy Moment, a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Global Ministries.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Okay, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being here today. It's my pleasure to welcome our next guest to the show, Gayle Trotter, attorney, columnist, and political analyst. Gayle, thank you for joining in.
Yes, so great to be with you.
All right, let's talk about A.G. Whitaker. He's the acting attorney general. According to people on the left side of the political aisle, not only is he a horrible person and probably out to, do some really terrible misdeeds in that position, he can't be there because it's unconstitutional. How much of that is true?
Right. Well, for some reason, the people on the left had no problem when Attorney General Eric Holder was declared to be in contempt of Congress, and you didn't see the outrage and the outcry about that, which had to do with making sure that Congress was informed so that they could perform their oversight duties over the Attorney General and the programs of the Department of Justice. So I think you can fairly say that this is an attempt, particularly by the left, to try and politicize the leadership of the Department of Justice, and it's a continuation of this attempt to try to say that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia to steal the election from Hillary Clinton, and yet there has been no evidence of that. If you look at all of the people that have been investigated and those who have come before the court and pled guilty, none of it implicated the Trump campaign itself. So this is yet another attempt to try and put pressure on the Trump administration by calling into question the competency and the integrity of the officials at the Department of Justice.
It is, and I spent some time kind of debating this with a couple of Democrats on cable news, and it became clear to me from the comments they and the host were making that the problem with A.G. Whitaker, the problem with then Attorney General Sessions, was not so much that there were anything really untoward about them. It was the issue that their oversight might impede Mueller from running amok with the investigation, which I believe he's under a lot of pressure to do that from Democrats behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about the vast resources of the federal government that have been afforded to Robert Mueller and the extensive, how many months we've gone on with this investigation. And the idea that, President Trump could have fired Jeff Sessions a long time ago. There are many things that he could have done with clear executive power to try and rein this investigation in. But he has tried as best he can, except with regards to bully pulpit. He has definitely used his ability on Twitter and in speeches that he's given to cast doubt on what he sees as a witch hunt. But in terms of the actual process of the investigation, he has relied on his attorneys to make sure that those process issues are resolved and looked at carefully, and he's let the investigation go on. So any Democrats who are out there trying to say that this is an attempt to thwart the investigation couldn't be further from the truth.
And so I just want to be as clear as possible here. The oversight that Jeff Sessions would have provided, because I believe Jeff Sessions to be a man of integrity, would have been simply to make sure that whatever the investigation entailed, it was being done in an impartial manner with oversight. That is all the oversight that the Attorney General can provide to the special prosecutor. It's not him being involved in every decision or being present for every interview. It's simply oversight.
Right, and as you know, Jeff Sessions had recused himself, which is why we had Robert Mueller in the first place, and that was a concern that it could kind of run amok, become this fishing expedition. But the oversight, the people who are really upset about this week that Jeff Sessions is not going to remain on as Attorney General, they are the same people months ago who were calling for Attorney General Sessions to step down. So I think that just gives even more evidence that this is all political posturing and not really a concern that the truth be found out and that the foundations of our legal system be observed and that there's a fair and independent process. And I think it kind of underscores the evidence for that point.
It does. The more we look at it, the more we focus on what's happening here. And if we just listen to what they're saying, it boils down to them saying we require no oversight from anyone who isn't a Democrat. And they constantly trumpet this thing with Mueller as a Republican. But I just, you know what, Gayle, can we just for 5 seconds, let's just take a moment and ponder what a Republican is, what it looks like. It's not John McCain. It's not Jeff Flake. I mean, I know people get mad at me. And if you do, God bless you. It's Friday. You got a whole weekend to get over it. But come on. I mean, so I have this idea in my mind about a Republican Party platform, and that people who agree with most of that can call themselves Republicans, and people who routinely work against that platform are not Republicans. And so I expect Mueller, who isn't a politician, he has a different role to play, but in calling him a Republican, it doesn't really make me comfortable with the work he's doing, because it's the work he's doing that I'm concerned with. He could call himself a Mars publican. He could be anything he wants. I just want to know that he's doing this investigation for the right reasons, and that he's not being pressured by Democrats to get an outcome that may or may not be legitimate. And when they talk about his tax returns and looking into his private business dealings and things like that, that doesn't sound like Russian collusion to me.
No, and I think you raise a really important point. When the left attacks President Trump about this investigation, they like to point out Bob Mueller is a Republican. He was a Bush appointee, and kind of give his bona fides for everything that associates him with the right. But they don't realize that that is not significant to people who think that law enforcement should not be based on whether you are part of one political party or another political party. These folks are supposed to be objective. They are supposed to be going in there, ferreting out the evidence. If there's a case, they make a case. They follow all of the principles of fair play and justice that we have in our country. We had Veterans Day this week, and we have had so many people die to preserve those types of principles. And so that, I think that is an excellent point you raised, that when people say, oh, Bob Mueller is Republican, that's a complete distraction from the entire issue. If he's a Republican, he's still required to do things the proper way. And saying that he's a Republican and that somehow gives Donald Trump an out because he's more likely to be more sympathetic to President Trump, no conservative, no Republican would want that. They want someone who's objective and who follows the law.
I mean, honestly, I would prefer that this investigation by the special prosecutor be run by someone who is the kind of person, almost like Megyn Kelly was before she left Fox News, where we just didn't know who she was. We did not know what her political leanings were. And she's an attorney. So, I mean, I know it's not a perfect apples to apples comparison, but she's one of the few people in the public sphere that we had no idea what her politics were. And that's something for her to work at Fox News and be as successful as she was, and for us not to know. I would prefer to know that a person, maybe I find out by accident that the person is a Democrat, a hardcore Democrat, but that in their professional life, because they're in the legal profession and, you know, criminal justice, the attorney general, chief law enforcement officer of the land, I prefer that person, if they were Democrat, Republican, politically agnostic, that it be that I would look at that person and say, their history of investigation shows that they are doggedly committed to the truth and to meting out justice. And so if you're in the wrongdoing and you're in their crosshairs, you should be afraid, not because of your political aspirations or any of that, but because this person, if you've done wrong things, they're going to dig it out and they're going to prosecute you. I would prefer that the special prosecutor be that person, because I don't want America led by a person who has done wrong things and is getting away with it. That's the reason I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. I don't even think Democrats understand that. Like, I honestly don't believe. Right. Gayle, you and I are sitting here, and I would prefer to see an investigation that showed wrongdoing. I don't care who the president is, than to leave the president there and have them getting away with whatever. But it still has to be within the scope of the investigation. They're not saying, we didn't open an investigation into his finances or his tax returns. The investigation is supposed to be about him colluding with the Russians.
Absolutely, and that's why we call it a fishing expedition. Those types of investigations where they bring everything, including the kitchen sink, into the investigation is really just determined on the result. They're trying to get a particular outcome. And I think you raised a great example. Think of the judge that just ruled in the Acosta
Oh,
CNN
thank you. I was going to ask
case.
you about that. Yes, please. Tell us the
and
truth.
He was a Donald Trump appointee, and he essentially has ruled on a temporary basis against the White House. And that is the kind of judge that Donald Trump has nominated to the bench, that they're going to put their personal policy preferences aside. They're going to put their politics aside. Just like you were saying, if someone's a hardcore Democrat and in charge of an investigation or in charge of sitting on a bench and deciding these issues, they need to follow the law. You should not know what their politics are based on the rulings or the results of their investigation. They should be above those kind of maneuvering. Otherwise, you end up doing politics through lawfare instead of the way that we in America like our politics, through elections and through our system of separation of powers, checks and balances. So with that case, we don't know ultimately what the final result of the Acosta CNN litigation is going to be, but how noteworthy that one of President Trump's judicial nominees in an opportunity to, decide this case ruled against the White House. So I think that speaks volumes about the kind of judges that the Trump administration is putting forward for the Senate to consider. And I think the Senate should continue confirming these judges because they are fair, independent, and impartial.
Okay, so I can't disagree with you, Gayle, but I do disagree with this idea that Jim Acosta is owed access to the White House. Can you explain the ruling that came down? Because I just don't understand why an organization that has 50 hard passes can't send someone else in Acosta's place, right? Like, how did the judge?
And that is so reasonable. That's like a common sense answer that I think most people would agree with. Definitely, when you look at the technicalities of the law, there are arguments that are made both ways. And I think Sarah Sanders said today that they're going to continue to push this. The White House is not giving up on this. So we don't know what the ultimate result is going to be. Someone was pointing out that Helen Thomas, when she was a correspondent at the White House, went for 3 years without being called on. I think it was by President Bush. Maybe it was President Obama. But certainly, even if you're required to have access to sit in that room, the president is not under any obligation to call on you and answer your questions. And certainly, Acosta has distinguished himself with what I would say is ridiculous behavior, unbecoming of a human being, let alone a journalist. But I think this is one thing you can count on from this White House. They're not going to back down. They're not going to give up the just concede defeat and allow him to behave the way that he wants to continue to behave. So I don't think you're going to see the last of this issue.
Okay, so you covered a lot there, Gayle, and I totally agree with you, but this is Jim Acosta we're talking about here. So if it were you, Gayle Trotter, intrepid reporter, CNN, you were in there and you didn't get called on, you would not stand up and say, excuse me, but I haven't been called on. But Jim Acosta has done that. If it were Stacey, intrepid reporter for CNN, and I didn't get called on for a month, let alone years like she did, I would not stand up and say, why don't you admit right now from where you're standing, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, that you have shame for working for Donald Trump. Jim Acosta has done that. I don't see how he gets back in that room and doesn't get called on and doesn't still make this entire press briefing about him. And I've already called it out before you came on. I believe they should station 2 Capitol Police armed next to him, and he should not be able to just roam around. He should be escorted in every space in the White House.
Yeah, that might be a better fight than with the beautiful intern that he swiped her hand away as she was trying to reclaim the microphone from him. What kind of a gentleman acts that way?
Such a bad look.
This isn't Afghanistan where you're trying to interview the Taliban or something. I mean, I just watched that video and I was just astonished by his behavior.
I couldn't believe it. I watched it live. I was like, it's on the live stream. And so I'm watching the live stream. It's on your laptop. So you're watching it and you're kind of like going back and forth between other windows. And I had picked up my pen to make a note to myself. Like, I believe I was making a little grocery list. And I glanced over and I saw that he was like kind of yelling at the president. And I put the pen down and I just got, how you just get engrossed. And they were engaging each other, and the president turned away from the podium and began to pace. And I was like, this thing might come to blows. I'm like, and then at that moment where he said, "You're done, sit down, you're a horrible person," I thought, oh no, like this is just, it's spinning out of control. And then the woman, the intern pops up, and I'm like, oh good, she'll take the mic. This will end it, because I'm just like, end this thing. She reaches for it, and he's just like gripping it. And I was like, he's not going to. He's not. She reaches again. He kind of deflects. I was like, did he really just? I mean, he didn't hit her, but he just brought his arm down, and then she moved her arm out of the way. And it would have been such a good moment for a flop. I already talked about this.
Yes.
She should have flopped over.
Absolutely.
Yes. You've seen the videos. They're so good. If listeners, if you've never seen a flop video for soccer players, you're missing out. If you want to giggle the whole afternoon away, wait till after the show, obviously. Then go to YouTube and type in soccer flops, and you will see soccer players. They'll just get slightly brushed by another player, and they toss their body, and they flop over like rag dolls. And I think she should have... that's what she should have done. His arm should have come down, and she should have uttered just the teensiest little, oh, and then flopped. And when you do it on the basketball court, you get a foul.
She could have just doubled down and made sure she took it from him. But,
well, she could have grabbed it, and as she flopped over, then he would have been shocked, and she would have had it in her hand, and then she would have flopped down, and she would have had the mic, and then everyone in the room would have jumped up like, what? It's a missed opportunity.
I like your style, Stacey.
I'm just saying, I wanted to see something. Well, part of me, just a teensy part of me, wanted the president to deck him, but I know that's never going to happen, but I just want some justice, some mob justice.
Yes.
Gayle Trotter.
Yeah, definitely don't deck him. But,
we love having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on. Have a great weekend and happy Thanksgiving. All right, we'll be right back.
Out of all the people in the world, we've all done or will do the following: be birthed into this earth, grow, go to school, maybe go to college, get married, have kids, grow old, and die. Doesn't sound too eventful when put in that perspective. For many, the thought of discipling someone is foreign from the mind and not even on the to-do list. In Matthew chapter 28, verse 19, Jesus tells us to go ye therefore, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. A disciple is more than a student. He or she is a follower of Jesus Christ. There are a lot of things in this world, but there's nothing like being a Christian. It's a life filled with adventures. Receiving an education, vacationing, marriage, having kids are good, but there's nothing like taking the time to nourish someone in God's word so that they can be a force to be reckoned with. That is priceless. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Victory McIntosh. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
I'm not so certain we have as much time as many of us think. It's high time for the body of Christ to return with a fire lit up under us to proclaiming the truth of God's word, to proclaim the truth of sin and repentance, and not coming from a high, lofty position, but telling the truth as such were some of us. We have to do that. We have to. But what happens is, and I call this first world problems, we have this epidemic of churchianity in America, to where we are far more accepting and far more willing to embrace the trappings of church life, even if they're void of the presence and power and fire of Christ. And I would say to you, just as the Bible says, that we can have a form of godliness while simultaneously, at the exact same time, deny the very power of the gospel.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on Urban Family Talk.
Fox on Faith with Lauren Green.
And I think the essence of being a good human being is to be a good ancestor while you're alive.
For filmmaker Aaron Wolf, his new film, Restoring Tomorrow, chronicles the $150 million restoration of the historic Wilshire Boulevard Synagogue in Los Angeles. Built in the 1920s by Hollywood elites like Louis B. Mayer and the Warner Brothers, it fell into disrepair during the tumultuous decades of cultural and social change. Its physical condition, an outward sign of the spiritual decline which Wolf realized he himself embodied.
I think it's a generational problem, and that's why I think this film and my journey serves as this microcosm.
The film airs at selected theaters. Wolf plans to donate his proceeds to all victims of the recent shootings in Pittsburgh and Thousand Oaks, California.
Younger people are starting to brand religious institutions with extremism. That's not the case. Extremism is not what religious institutions, what faith is all about.
For Fox on Faith, Lauren Green, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back.
He is an embarrassment, and that's one of the reasons that the president decided to take the swift action that he did. Jim Acosta made that press conference a travesty, and he made it about himself. It was his ego-driven speech to the president, not a question, but a speech. The CNN has 50 hard passes, 50, more than anybody else. So they have the ability to have people there covering this president and asking questions.
Okay, that's David Bossie. He's an author and frequently on the shows commentating. And he was talking about CNN suing to get Acosta's hard pass back being a publicity stunt. Now, we've since seen the judge rule in this case that the hard pass must be restored. But we don't know what the judge is actually going to rule in the final adjudication of this thing. So before we get to calls, I want to get into Psalm 25:4, which is our daily confession. I ran long in the first segment and didn't get it done, so that is my fault. I always intend on having our daily confession in the first segment. It's a great way to start the show out. So I'm going to do that. The call lines are open at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. And we are looking today at, and this is just, I love it when a daily confession kind of dovetails in with something that is going on. Psalm 25:4. It says, "Show me your ways, Lord. Teach me your paths." That's the New International Version. If you go down to let me see if I can find the King James here. King James 2000, "Show me your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths." And so this is something that we have to be kind of praying ourselves, just putting it out there, saying, "Show me your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths." When we say that it's almost like the power up button on the Mario Kart or the Mario games where you're playing the video game and you hit a triangle that glows or you hit some kind of special feature and then your character gets supercharged. This is where we can ask the Lord to supercharge our walk with him, our faith, our everything that we experience in God by saying, "Please show me your ways, teach me your paths." The prayer itself, Psalm 25:4, that verse, that specific verse, basically you're humbly yielding yourself to God because it's a choice, right? God does not want automatons or, Stepford people. He doesn't force us to have a relationship with him. He gives us the choice, and then we get to engage. We get to say, "You know what? I'm just a Sunday church person." I mean, how many of those people do we know? And God bless you if that's where you are. We got to start somewhere. But when you meet someone who is, the online social media acronym is WOG, Woman of God. I like to use that one. And Men of God too. You meet them, there's something different you sense immediately. And I am not talking about churchianity and, people who speak churchese and all. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a true person of faith that when you encounter them, you know something different from the outset. But as you get to know them a little more, you realize that they have a deep personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And if you're in a position where you need someone to lock arms, take your hands, and pray with you about an issue, this is a person you want on your list because you want to be able to call them and say, "You know what, I'm struggling with this. Can we pray?" And without any questions, they don't need details. They're not looking for something to share with their friends at lunch. They just want to pray with you because you asked them to, and you can feel that it's a strength that comes from continually staying in connection with God in prayer that makes you, it's the true epitome of a prayer warrior, but it has to begin somewhere. And I believe that it begins with often seeking the Lord in prayer and saying, "Show me your ways, O Lord, teach me your paths." Because his mind is not like our mind. His mind is higher than our mind. His ways are not our ways. We don't naturally incline ourselves to humility and peacemaking and loving our neighbor. That is not our natural state in our human bodies here that we're this life we're walking out. But when we start off there, show me your ways, Lord, teach me your paths, and we start putting that as a mantra to him and really just laying yourself out there, some of what you'll experience is you'll have the enemy come at you with some fear. Well, if you say that, he's going to tell you to go be a missionary in Africa. More than likely, that's not what's going to happen. What he's going to say is you're already in the mission field. The mission field is here, right now in this country. It's your friends, family, and neighbors. It's your children, your husband, your wife. It's the place where you already are. Plenty of people are called to be missionaries. We see them go out into the field. They sometimes are martyred. But that is not the fear that when you hear that, that's a trick of the enemy. Squash it. That is not what God has for you. What God has for you is a deeper, closer relationship and walk with him in which he shows you things that he can't show to you unless you're willing to say, show me your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths. So that's it. That's the daily confession for today. Psalm 25:4. Take it, use it, pray it, and connect with him. And right before we go to the phones, I just want to say really quickly, this is National Collection Week for Operation Christmas Child. SamaritansPurse.org/OCC. Find the collection site near you. Participate in spreading the gospel through Christmas gifts. These are not expensive things, but they mean so much to the kids who get them around the world. And it's a wonderful way to give something back during Christmas. And it's easy and it's fun. And the impact goes on into eternity. So wonderful opportunity, National Collection Week. It's actually going on until the 19th. SamaritansPurse.org/OCC. 5,000 collection centers, one near you. Check it out. All right, let's go to the phones. We have Jacob in Alabama. Jacob, thank you for calling in today. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you and happy Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Turkey Day.
Yeah, I got a thing here. I just got in and they kind of told me to say these few little scriptures to you. But now he showed me Proverbs 25, which is like 5, 6, and 7.
Okay.
He said, take away the wicked from before the king, which we would say the president, and his throne will be established in righteousness. Do not exalt yourself in the presence of the king, which is what Jim Acosta did. And do not stand in the place of great men. For it is better that he say to you, come up here, than that you should be put lower in the presence of the prince, whom your eyes have seen. And the next one says, not go hastily to court. So what will you do in the end when your neighbor has put you to shame?
Come on now, Jacob.
Okay. And here's the next one. And now we know what happened with Avenatti and everybody that comes against President Trump. Okay?
Yeah.
He was 24:17 on Proverbs. Do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles. Lest the Lord see it, and it displease him, and he turn his wrath away from him. Do not fret because of evildoers, nor be envious of the wicked. For there will be no prospect for the evil man. The lamp of the wicked will be put out. Now you see what happened to Avenatti.
Mm-hmm.
You see what happened to the lady that was a pornography person.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody that comes against him, because God puts up presidents, he puts up prime ministers, and he sets them down. If he puts them up and they come against him, watch what happens. And you haven't seen anything yet.
Not
You
yet.
see what happens with the Clintons? Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. And he told me to tell you this. When you get home, and you're going to be on fire next week, read Psalm 73, and you'll see exactly what's going to happen to them.
Okay, I wrote it down. Psalm 73. Jacob, fantastic as always. I love it when you call into the show. Happy Thanksgiving to you, and thank you for calling in today. All right, so we have, we still have more time. Let's go to Daniel in Kentucky. Daniel, thank you for calling in today. Happy Friday.
Hello, Stacy. Enjoy your show. God bless you, sister.
Thank you.
It's great to speak with you. Let's see. Yes, we have difficult times ahead, just as 2 Timothy chapter 3 tell us, well, actually, a lot of the Bible, honestly, when we have the eyes to see, we can see so much. But yes, we are going to have very difficult times ahead. What I see is major concerns in the lack of discipline in the home, which I understand that there are, like I love Ben Carson. He had a hard time, single mom, single parent, brought him up in the same way, and he turned out great. His mind is great. Neurosurgeon. I'm very glad to push any of his books. For young people, I would like they read more instead of playing games as much.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I understand. When I was growing up, we had some. When we were real young, Atari, but our parents got on to us that and of course we still love to play outside most of the time. But if it snowed, we had to be in. But anyway, what I was going to say, the lack of discipline, the disrespecting of authority is the main thing, like the Jim Acosta thing. I'm furious about that. What's right is right. What's wrong is wrong. Just like the Bible says, right now they're calling right wrong, and they're calling wrong,
right. Yeah, absolutely. Just like the Bible says they will in the end days. And Daniel, thank you so much for calling. I gotta say, one thing you said that sticks out to me is that we see a lot of this disrespect, and we see it online and social media. We see it on websites. Like if you go to Live Leak, you can find all these videos. If you go to World Star Hip Hop, you see a lot of people doing this kind of stuff. But then what you also see is that it's not just strictly the purview of people who come from, quote unquote, the other side of the tracks or broken homes or things like that. I've met plenty of kids who are extremely respectful and just beautifully turned out children who come from single parent homes. And I've met plenty of kids who have a mom and a dad at home who are, the parents just are sweet as they can be. And the kids just have the mouths on them. Like, you're like, whoa, whose child is this again? This can't be your child. So it is really about what parents do with their kids, what they're willing to tolerate, and whether or not they're willing to mete out any punishment. But Jim Acosta is a special case because he has been trained to behave this way by his employer. He's permitted to behave this way. He's encouraged to behave this way because CNN has a ratings issue. If they weren't paying to be in airports in America, they estimate their airport audience as of like 2013 was 280 million people. Without those 280 million people, imagine what their ratings would be. That is why it's so important for us to begin to approach our local municipal airports and say, we don't want to listen to CNN when we're in the airport. We're tired of listening to it. We're exhausted by the prospect of constantly being assaulted by what is now just opinion coverage 24/7. And it should be, we're paying for the tickets. We're paying the taxes that help the airport to stay in business. We should have a right not to listen to CNN at the airport. It all goes back to what we're willing to tolerate. So excellent call. We have time for just one more. Nellie in Arkansas. Thank you so much.
Hi. I just wanted to say with this Acosta situation and with any reporter at one of the news conferences, if they won't sit down and be quiet, if when the president says that's it and tries to call him someone else and they refuse, he should just turn around and walk out of the room and that's the end.
Ooh.
Instead of engaging in any kind of an argument, just turn around, put the microphone down, and leave. And that's it. And he doesn't come back in. And if he did that often enough, that would make a statement to the reporters.
Well, and wouldn't the other reporters just be so enraged by the fact that they were after him and he ends the press conference every time he asks a question and he won't give the mic up, the press conference is over? Wouldn't that make the other reporters rein him in? Imagine how upset they would be if they didn't get to ask a question because he constantly did that.
Exactly. And then it wouldn't be an argument. He would be he would just leave the room.
And Sarah Huckabee Sanders too, right?
Yeah, and he would preserve his dignity, and he would just, because he doesn't have to give those news conferences. According to what I'm hearing, that's not anything he has to do, and so it would end it right there.
Not on camera briefings. He doesn't have to do press conferences at all. President Obama went for long periods of time without doing it. Nellie in Arkansas, thank you so much for calling the show. She makes a good point. And so this is how awesome it is when we have like a caller like Nellie call in with something that is such a foundational bedrock principle. And I'm going to, go back to when I was younger, and my mom actually taught this to my sister and I. That I remember her saying, I was telling her, I was in middle school, and I was telling her about how at lunchtime sometimes some of the kids would go up to another kid, and it would be one-on-one or it'd be two-on-one, and they would begin to insult that kid, and the kid would just have to stand there and take it or sit there and take it. And my mom said, why? And I said, why what? And she said, why does the kid have to sit there and take it? And I said, I don't know. And she said, no one has to sit there and take it. You get up and walk away, pick up your tray, walk away. And I said, oh. She said, did it ever occur to you that you're not required to talk to someone? And I remember thinking as a middle schooler, I was like, whoa, she's right. And I remember going up to the kid the next day, not someone I knew super well, but it was happening. It had happened a few times. And I said, why don't you just get up and walk away? And the kid looked at me and said, I don't know. And then did it. These are the kind of things that we used to teach our kids. We used to really kind of drum into them because we didn't accept poor public behavior. We didn't accept it. We shouldn't accept it now. I hear the music. It's Friday. God bless you. Get in the pew on Saturday and Sunday. One of those days. Find some time for the Lord. And your family, unplug. God bless you from the heartland. OneNewsNow.com. News and information up next. Keep it here.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
You only want to donate to biblically sound organizations. So as a federal or state employee, why not choose the American Family Association Combined Federal Campaign Designation 12037? Of the organizations on the CFC list, AFA is one of the few standing for you and your family. By choosing 12037, you help make it possible for us to continue.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. The many weeks of travel north for thousands of Central American migrants are coming to an end as they reach Tijuana, Mexico. William Lajeunesse reports.
Within eyesight of U.S. soil, migrants face the reality of a life of waiting in Tijuana, Mexico. Elvis Romero explains the problem.
They're saying right now only that 30 or 50 people they're going to cross to there every day. And that's about 10,000 people coming right now. That's impossible.
By most estimates, it will be well into next year before many get to state their asylum claims to U.S. officials. And for those who don't wait and wind up cross illegally, Rodney Scott, Chief of the Border Patrol in San Diego, says they're ready to interdict.
We've been preparing for a couple weeks now. We've surged in resources. Department of Defense has been helping us harden the border. What that really means is using concertina wire, building obstacles, making it harder to cross between the ports of entry.
In Tijuana, William Lajeunesse, Fox News.
The saga continues in the Florida ballot recount. Eben Brown reports.
The eyes are on Broward County, Florida once again, as it was revealed yesterday after finishing the machine recount that their totals were rejected by the state because they filed them a couple of minutes late. The recount total in Broward would have showed an increase of 700 or so votes for Republican Rick Scott in the U.S. Senate race. Republicans are alleging that Broward election supervisor Brenda Snipes did it on purpose. Snipes denies this. Now the hand recount is underway and is a much busier scenario with lots of people poring over individual paper ballots. In Lauderhill, Florida, Eben Brown, Fox News.
North Korea says it has a high-tech weapon while it deports an American who they say into the country illegally. Simon Owen reports.
North Korea sending conflicting signals, first announcing that it has successfully tested what it calls a newly developed high-tech tactical weapon and offering no further specifics. But within hours of that announcement, there was also news about an American prisoner. North Korea saying it's decided to release a man who it detained a month ago for entering the country illegally. The North Korean government saying the man told investigators that he'd been manipulated by the CIA. Simon Owen, Fox News.
A meeting of Catholic bishops in Baltimore last weekend concluded without any action on holding themselves accountable regarding the clergy sex abuse scandal. Steve Jordahl reports.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops were considering measures that would establish a lay commission to receive complaints against bishops and a code of conduct that would have been the first such ethical guidelines for bishops on sex abuse. But hours before the gathering, top Vatican officials called to insist they not take any action. David Clossie of Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests was disappointed but not surprised.
To be honest, we in SNAP were not thrilled with the measures that U.S. bishops were proposing. Still, some progress beats no progress, and by everybody's measure, this meeting ends with no progress.
Rome did not specify a reason for its intervention, but Clossie says there's another meeting early next year.
Clearly, the Pope has some misgivings about what U.S. bishops wanted to do, and supposedly he's putting all of his eggs in one basket. This meeting coming up in February in Rome.
But Clossie says bishops don't need permission to start the reforms.
Right now, every bishop in America could box up his files on clergy sex crimes and walk them over to the DA's office. Every bishop could post on his website the names of proven, admitted, and credibly accused child molesters.
In that regard, even SNAP appears to be looking in the wrong direction. Court records and multiple studies say 80% of the victims of Catholic clergy abuse are teenage boys and men. It's not primarily a child abuse scandal. It's a homosexual priest scandal. I'm Steve Jordahl.
A winter weather storm has broken records and affected people from Mississippi to Connecticut. Tanya J. Powers has more.
At least 7 storm-related traffic deaths have been reported in states including Mississippi, Arkansas, Ohio, and Indiana. In New York City, the first snowstorm of the season broke an 80-year record and dumped as much as 6 inches of snow.
I think this is crazy that we have snow already before Thanksgiving.
First snow of the year. It looks great.
In New York City, Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fool because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We have now completed the election. We've completed the count. We've completed the recount. And it's time for Governor Scott to assume the duties.
The president has said there's no Russia collusion, and he's also said that he's complying, and he is with his attorneys.
President Trump is not going to fire Mueller. Mueller's going to be allowed to do his job.
It's very important to note that the people who promised they were going to frog march Donald Trump out of the White House because of Russia collusion 2 years ago are now belly aching about something else.
And now, Stacy Washington.
So, you know what? When I hear Kellyanne Conway talking about how people were going to frog march Donald Trump out of the White House, it's that whole idea that they're not accepting his election. They're not accepting the result of the election. And this is a piece by Stephen Moore, Why the Left Hates Prosperity. It's so obvious that there are people on the right, the political right, not true believers, not individuals who really want to see policy make changes so that American lives can be improved. They prefer the status quo because then they have something to fight for. Then they have a great base of operations for their consultancy class. Then they have someone who'll pay $10,000, $15,000 a month to consultants to create ads and run campaigns, as opposed to, because they're losing, because those are the campaigns that are really, you can charge the most. You're trying to get back into the majority. You're trying to get back into the White House. Those are the campaigns where the people make the most money and where winning can make a name for you. And so there are people who are really integrally interested in losing. And we realized that back when we had Mitt Romney. We realized that with John McCain. And we're talking about standard bearers like George H.W. Bush, Bob Michelle, Bob Dole, John McCain, Mitt Romney, and now Mr. I don't go anywhere, I must be related tangentially to Hillary Clinton, Bob Kasich. Yes, you heard it here first. This man is actually in New Hampshire trying to drum up support for a primary run against Donald Trump. And you know what I say to that? Bring it on, bro. Bring it on. The best thing to happen to Donald Trump will be you with your little, fruit ninja hands swinging all over the place, saying stuff that doesn't make any sense, trying to be a moderate, really standing for nothing, believing in anything. That just makes the Trump base stronger. There's nothing like standing up something that doesn't really mean anything next to the true and genuine article. You've seen it? If you're a shopper, you've been to the store and you've seen some newfangled thing sitting next to the thing that you know is the real article. And you may take a quick look at the newfangled thing, and it may be something that you're interested in, maybe trying out or something like that. But in the end, you're going to go with that tried and true real deal item, the one that has that, that warranty, or the one that you can trust that this particular product is going to do what it says it's going to do, and it's going to be worth your money. And the other item will be something that's like a fad. It goes up, it's super popular, and then you never see it again. And most people can't even remember what it was called. Remember when we had that one? No, nobody remembers it but you, because you were the only one who was foolish enough to buy it. And that's what's happened to voters on the right. We were foolish enough to buy John McCain. We were foolish enough to buy, I voted for George Bush, the younger. I supported his presidency. It is only recently, in the past 3 or 4 years, that I've learned what a softy he is on immigration and how he played such a huge role in leaving that mess that Donald Trump is now trying to clean up. I still respect him greatly, but I do have that against him. I do. We bought into Dole. We bought into McCain. We bought into Romney. We were told it's his turn. We bought into the whole idea that it wasn't the best candidate that we needed. It was the person whose turn it was. He ran, he donated, he did everything he's supposed to do. It's his turn. We're seeing fewer and fewer of those turn candidates, people whose turn it is to be in charge of us. And we're seeing more and more of these people who are rising up and saying, look, I'm here to do a job. I see a need. I need to fill it. I've got the skills. I'm going to go do this thing. I don't need to be in office. I want to be in office for this specific reason, and then I am going to go back to my private life, which is coincidentally what the founders called our elected officials to be. They were never supposed to have huge apartments in Washington, D.C. and be a part of the cocktail circuit. Washington, D.C. and the surrounding metro area was never meant to be the highest concentration of well-paid government employees. None of this stuff is what the founders called or laid out for us as Americans. It's in our blood, the freedom. That's what people say about us. That's what I say about us. That's what you can smell it a mile away. An American is a different thing. It's a unique creation. It's a beast of another specific type of origin compared to every other type of human that lives on the face of this planet. That's why people are kicking and clawing and scraping and killing themselves to get in here. Because if they can't be born here, they want to come here and drink the same water that we drink and breathe the same air that we breathe and go to the same churches we go to so they can get a little bit of that American spirit in them. They want to marry an American. They want to be a part of an American family because this is that one thing. And it doesn't come because we're so special. It's because this country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles and God's presence is here. That's why they want to get in here. They'll call it racist. They'll say anything they want to about it. But in the end, they want to be here. Ask them. Look at them flying their little flags from Honduras. And the one chick who just got elected to office, she's flying the Palestinian flag. But offer her a one-way ticket to Palestine and see what she says. Well, first of all, that's not a place. And second of all, she don't want to go there. Being the person she is with her head wrapped up in that ridiculous rag is something that she thinks she can do because she's in America, because we allow her to do that. In other countries, she would have to sit down and be quiet, or she'd be a slave. Send her to the Middle East and drop her off someplace with no identification, and she would be enslaved within moments. That's how it is. The only reason you get to walk around, as I did in Saudi Arabia, and drive a vehicle off base, and run around in pants, go shopping on my own, buy whatever I wanted to. The only reason I was able to do all of that stuff is because I had a green ID card. I had command sponsorship from the United States government, and they knew that me being there was a privilege for them. I was the gift to them, me and all of the other thousands of American troops who were in Saudi Arabia at the time doing work that they wanted us to be there to do. Now, drop a black woman off in Saudi Arabia on her own with no ID card and see how fast it is she's up at somebody's compound cleaning and cooking and getting called slave in Arabic. Understand the difference. And so that is why it is absolutely ridiculous for us to allow, you know, I'm sure very well-meaning people, Bush, Dole, McCain, Romney, losers, big, fat, sweater vest-wearing losers. Their day has passed. The day of the Republicans pushing out losers is over. That's why we're saying goodbye to Jeff Flake. That's why we're saying goodbye to all those retirements. We were sitting, I actually spent time wondering what is going to happen in the midterm. This is like a year ago when we're seeing all of these Republicans. I'm not going to run. I'm leaving office. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I was wondering what's going to happen. Well, you know what? So we lost the House. Would you rather we kept it with a bunch of rhinos in the Senate and then the House of Representatives, rhinos who like losing, the clones of McCain and Dole and all that, those sweater vests wearing, limp-wristed, couldn't talk their way out of a paper bag, faux Republicans? They were closer friends with the Democrats than they ever were to their own constituents. They forgot what they campaigned on. They raised the money and spent it and didn't care about answering to the voters. We're glad to see them go. We're happy to see them ushered out. It is better to have divided government and have the Democrats out there beating the drum of impeachment, talking about everything but what matters to Americans. It's a perfect foil for the real deal. Let the Democrats be that fake piece of garbage, made in China product that won't be around in 2 years. Let them be that so that Donald Trump can shine ever the more brightly as someone who seriously cares about sealing our border and spreading economic prosperity. It's actually a blessing. And you know, God works out everything for our good, according to those who are called according to his purpose. Why doubt? Why doubt that this is going to be perfectly fine? Meanwhile, just in case anybody doubts what I say about Jeff Flake, what is he up to right now? He's actually got a bill together with a bunch of Democrats. Now, remember, this is the lame duck. He's supposed to be going to people's offices and dropping off thank you gifts and getting little bags of candy and stuff like that. And people are supposed to be, you know, like talking to him and introducing him to people so he can get something cushy to do in the private sector when he leaves his office. He is not supposed to be raising Cain with the Democrats right now. But if you need an illustration on why it is that we need Jeff Flake to go, why it is fine to lose the House of Representatives as long as we lose Jeff Flake, why it is fine to lose the House of Representatives as long as we have all of the other Jeff Flake cohorts in the House on their way out, why we finally can thankfully say to Paul Ryan, thank you, sir, and goodbye for the last time, because these people weren't there to serve you. They weren't there for your best interests. They had great campaigns. They said all the right things, but in the end, they don't care about you. They don't believe they need to answer to you. And that is why it is past time for them to go. And we should be thanking God that it's not about Donald Trump being ordained or him being so special. It's that for this specific time, for this time where we have all of these people in Washington, D.C. who claim one party, but really are surrogates for the other party, that a house cleaning, we've all been there, haven't we? Haven't we all? You keep your house clean. You do your regular weekly rituals, et cetera. But then it's that time of year where you do the deep cleaning and you get in the corners and the crevices and you take some extra time and you get the shop vac out in your garage and everything's out of the garage and you pour bleach on the floor and you scrub it down and everything gets cleaned, clean. And then when you're done, you go take a shower, put on some lounging clothes and come downstairs and pop some popcorn and sit down and watch a movie or something. And you look around and you take a deep breath and you're like, whew, that's nice. So we don't need fake Democrats. We have enough of those. What we need is real Democrats who they cannot restrain themselves. They will not be able to treat their own Trump derangement syndrome. They will put their feet too far out. They will step too far outside of what even their voters want to see. They will never answer the promises they've made. They're not going to get single payer. It's a pipe dream that can never happen in this country. They can't even figure out a way to fix their own monstrosity, which is Obamacare. And they're not interested in fixing it because it's easier for them to run on fixing health care than to actually do anything about it. And so in the end, the table is set. And just like it says in the Bible, he will prepare a table before you in the presence of your enemies. The Democrats are lining up to watch us eat. So let's get it on. So here's Lindsey Graham. We're going to go out on this. You got President Trump. He's not going to fire Mueller. He's never said he's going to fire Mueller. Lindsey Graham is, thank God that he's been loosed. He's like a real person. I'm so glad about it. Here he is, number one.
Well, this is a manufactured problem. President Trump is not going to fire Mueller. Mueller's going to be allowed to do his job, and we need conservative judges on the bench, as many as we can, as often as we can get them. I don't know what Senator Grassley is going to do. He's been a great chairman of the committee. If I'm chairman next year, we're going to do judges, and more judges. And at the end of the day, I am convinced that Mr. Mueller will be allowed to do his job. I've seen not one scintilla evidence of collusion. The obstruction of justice thing never made any sense to me. You can fire somebody who works as a political appointment. The FBI director could be fired for almost any reason, and the Democrats wanted Comey fired. So I feel good about everything right now.
Me too. Because you know what? While the House is literally a flaming dumpster fire, and God bless those Republicans who are going to have to deal with the Democrats for the next 2 years in the House, I just, we have to pray for their strength. Over in the Senate, it's just going to be judges in the morning, judges at night, judges in the noonday, judges in the afternoon. It's going to be judges, 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 judges. It's going to be Supreme Court judges, probably 2 more of those. But on the appellate level, the remaking of the court with a conservative bent for the foreseeable future. And remember, when Gayle Trotter was on last hour, we were talking about how wonderful it will be to have people who are placed in authority on these judges' benches who are not politically motivated. People who are willing to rule on what a person has done according to what the law says, instead of, oh, I better go soft here. This is a Democrat. Oh, I better not rule against this person. It's a Republican. We don't want that. We're a nation of laws. And I'm just so glad about it. So, yes, it's not the best situation, but then again, it is, because we don't need any more rhinos. Put the sweater vest to bed permanently. Let's not resurrect it ever again. It's time for real legislators. And if we can't get real Republicans, the Democrats will do just fine, because they're never, ever going to do anything for the American people. When we get back, we'll have Cedra Sartin. Stay there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. The popularity of our spiritual heritage tours each year continues to grow. Those are our tours to Washington, D.C., Mount Vernon, Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. Those are 2 separate trips, but a lot of folks go on both of them. But the popularity continues to grow, and we sell out 2 or 3 months in advance every year. So we're letting you know when our June and September tours are. Just go to our website, spiritualheritagetours.com. spiritualheritagetours.com. There's 2 tours. There's one to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, and then there's a separate trip, but they're back-to-back, to Washington, D.C., and to George Washington's Mount Vernon. So, if you want to go on those tours with us, just go to the website, spiritualheritagetours.com, spiritualheritagetours.com, and check out all the info.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Imagine a world in which everyone followed the ethic Jesus taught about sex, marriage, and relationships. Sean McDowell asked people to consider that when he was involved in a discussion about biblical sexuality. Here's what he said. There would be no sexually transmitted diseases, no abortions, no brokenness from divorce. Every child would have a mother and father and experience the love and acceptance each parent uniquely offers. There would be no rape, no sexual abuse, no sex trafficking, pornography, and no need for a #MeToo campaign. Think of the healing and wholeness if people simply lived Jesus' life-giving words regarding human sexuality. In a recent column, he went on to add so much more. Think about it. There would be no more sexually transmitted infections like AIDS, herpes, or HPV. Of course, there'd be no rape. There wouldn't be any unwanted pregnancies. The whole culture would be better. There would be no crude or degrading sexual humor. Critics wouldn't be making fun of young people who decided to wait until marriage to have sexual relations. Marriages would be better. There would probably be a significant drop in the divorce rate. You would have fewer deadbeat dads. You would probably have fewer men leaving their wives for younger women. Of course, you can make up your own list of all the positive things that would happen if we follow the sex ethic of Jesus. God's word instructs us in behavior that will protect us from so many of the devastating sexual and social consequences of turning away from his instructions to us. Let me suggest that you use this argument the next time you hear someone argue for sexual freedom, or the next time you hear someone make fun of a young person who decided to remain a virgin until marriage. Sean McDowell has given us a powerful argument. I encourage you to use it. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Woohoo! And the party goes on. Now it's time to speak with Cedra Sartin, content coordinator for Engage Magazine. The website's engagemagazine.net. Cedra, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Stacy. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about this. We've got the Engage Annual, which is a hard copy of the magazine that's released once a year. What can we expect and how do we get it?
It's pretty much our main topic is, just hard situations and how to deal with them. Each one has a theme, and this is our third one, and kind of our center article, the one that is on the front cover, is When the World Asks Why, and it just kind of addresses, when people ask, why does this happen? Why did, someone I love die? Why did someone get hurt? And that's kind of the hard topics that we cover in this edition. But if you go to engagemagazine.net and click the magazine tab, it'll take you directly to a page where you can fill out your information, and we'll send you your copy of your magazine.
So it's complimentary, is it?
Yes, it is.
So listen to that, listeners and live stream viewers. This is a free magazine geared towards the youth, the millennials, the young adults, etc., that answers hard questions. What excuse do you have for not going on and getting it? I mean, I'm all about free complimentary items if they're high quality, and this sounds like it's too good to be true. Tell us more.
Well, we started, this is kind of a way, there are a lot of people who you can tell them, hey, go to this website, and a lot of times they may or may not do that. But if you give them something and put it in their hand, chances are eventually they're going to start thumbing through it, when they're just sitting there and maybe they're bored or whatever, but maybe something will catch their interest and they'll start reading, and they'll start reading an article that applies to their life, and then maybe they'll want to share it.
So this is something that I've seen happen a lot at our house, which is that's why I leave the AFR journal around, because my kids will pick it up and read it. And it's not so much that I have to say, oh, this is political or this isn't political. It's more about them always looking for something to read. And if they see it laying there and it looks, different, as in they hadn't seen it before, or if they've seen it before and they've read a couple of cool things in it, they're likely to pick it up and thumb through. And I think that is one of the easiest ways. It's the reason why a lot of us, back when Bible tracts were a thing, you would take some to the airport with you and you would just leave it on your chair. You get up and you leave it there. And it's easier than walking up to someone and saying, you need to read this, or Jesus loves you. And they're like, you're some kind of crazy, don't leave me alone. Well, it's easier to just leave it on the table. And then someone comes and they pick it up, and they might pick it up thinking, I got to clear the table off. I want to eat here. But when they look at it, they might flip through it, because we're always looking for something to read. Honestly, as humans, it's our natural bent is, oh, there's something to read. Let me take a look at it. So it is a good tip that you're giving, which is get the magazine, leave it out so someone can be touched. And these are not accidents. When you go and you order the magazine and you get it in your hand, then you leave it out, whether it's at your doctor's office or at work or at home for one of your own kids to bump into. The Lord will provide the eyeballs that need to take a look at it. You just go ahead and do the thing, which is go to engagemagazine.net, fill out your information, and get the free copy.
Yes, and most of our content is also on the website. So you can go to engagemagazine.net, and so you can share it online as well if you want to. But I know we get a lot of people who say, my daughter or my son or my granddaughter or my grandson, they would love something like this. Can I have some copies to give to them? And through that, they can find out about the ways to see us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. So we're online, but this is just a way that you can get this into the hands of more people.
So I'm excited about it. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the other topics that the 2019 edition covers: marriage from the perspective of single and married people.
Yes.
Gossip, social media. Tell us more about that.
Well, we have a lot of these are written by people that work here at the American Family Association. We have had interns come through and write articles for us. We even have reach out of the younger age to have people write for us. Alex McFarland. I'm sure people on American Family Radio have heard his name.
Mm-hmm.
He has an article.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he has an article in this edition. Then we have Myra Gilmore, who was here for a time, and she wrote for us. And she writes from the perspective of a single person. And then we have Stacy Singh, who works in the AFA Journal, and she writes for the Journal, but she also writes for us from time to time. And she wrote an article titled "What Nobody Told Me About Marriage." And she just recently, a couple months ago, celebrated her 1-year anniversary. And so she just shares some truths and some things that she has learned over this past year being married. And just for the ones, there are things that people didn't tell her. And so she just kind of digs from where she is in life. And that's kind of what all the articles are. People take things from their life and they write about them and expand on them, and just share some of the things that God has placed on their heart with the world and whoever will read it.
So, what is the mission of Engage Magazine? Maybe someone's listening and they haven't really heard much or really don't understand what the mission is, and I want to make sure that people have that information.
Yes, well, our mission, and it's on our website, anybody can go and read it. Engage exists to provide perspective on culture through the eyes of a biblical worldview, and that is our goal. We just want to show how that worldview intersects with culture and how it engages it.
So I'm excited about this. It's the annual thing. I plan to go on and get my copy so I can first leave it around my house, and then after that, take it somewhere else and leave it around.
I'll make sure to send you some.
Yeah. So my thing with it is I will often go, you go to the dentist, you go to the doctor's office, and you see in there, there's always magazines like Self, Runner, things like that. There's always maybe one interior design magazine like Better Homes and Gardens or HGTV. And then after that, it's anybody's guess what you're going to see in there. And I know they try not to be offensive, like they're not trying to offend the people who are sitting in their office, but this is a captive audience that they have. You're sitting there for sure for 20 minutes. If you get there on time, you're sitting for 20 minutes. If you get there early, you're sitting for 40 minutes. If you get there late, you're sitting there for 20 minutes. So people are going to read the stuff that's laying around. And so it's a good thing for them to have something a little bit more impactful, but you don't see the AFA Journal laying around in doctors' offices. And that I feel like it's my calling to leave some of them laying around. Like, this is something I need to be doing. And others out there in listener land need to be doing it too. We should all be leaving our AFA journals out there for people to read when we're done.
I know that I have sat in doctor's offices before, and I've picked up and read books, and I've read through recipes, and I don't cook, just because you're sitting there bored. And I think it's an awesome idea to leave these around, as long as there's no objection to you doing so. Yeah, leave as many of them as you can and take them to people's houses. If you have a friend, take them there. If you maybe you work with the BSU or another organization, at your school, take some copies and share it with the group.
Yeah, I think we're missing a little bit of an opportunity, and that's why it's important for us to discuss it, because it's the idea. We're going, we're always going to these places. We can't help the fact that we have to go to the doctor and the dentist and et cetera. And we also can't expect them to feel like they're going to reach out to AFR and get the magazine. They may not even know about it, but it is okay for us to leave it. And my thing with this is, what can it hurt? So I'm not talking about going in and asking, may I have permission to leave this here? Just go in and tuck it in. If it were some kind of controversial content, then I would say, don't do that. But this is not. The only thing controversial about this is that it used to be so uncontroversial to find Christian literature and things that glorified God in public. It used to be commonplace, and now we actually need to sneak out there, with our little padded shoes on and slide the magazines, and it's perfectly fine to do so. I think we should do it. We should get to doing it.
Well, you also don't know who's going to find an article in here that is speaking to their life, and maybe might change what they're going through, and there may be some information. We use these writers use scripture, and they base everything off scripture, and you just don't know who you might touch by leaving this laying around somewhere.
And so that's a perfect segue. The website's engagemagazine.net. You have the Engage 2019 annual that's about to come out. The content's online, so you can kind of preview it there. But if you want your paper copy, there's a place for you to order it. It's complimentary. And I really am so glad that you're doing this, Cedra. Thank you for the work you're doing over at Engage Magazine. And I'm praying for growth, exponential growth in 2019 for the magazine.
Thank you so much, Stacey. Thank you for having me on.
Sure. It's great to talk to you. Cedra Sartin, content coordinator for Engage Magazine. So this is one of the, it's like an additional icing on the cake for me, because I get to be on the radio here. I get to do my work here. But it's also that the other parts of American Family Association are doing good work, that really, this is the work that we want to be involved in and be assisting with. It goes on into eternity. And it's such a wonderful thing to see happening, the growth, that this is what we want. And so if you're one of our partners here at American Family Radio and AFA, God bless you. Thank you for sowing seed in. Look what's happening. Engage Magazine is growing. They have the annual copy. One day in the future, we might see more frequent paper copies of the magazine, which would be fantastic. But the online option is there, and the content is there. It's fresh and it's updated, and it's geared towards a segment of our society that we're finding out more and more is unchurched and really untouched by the gospel. And so whatever we can do to get that message out there is what we got to do. It's not about us wanting to do it. It's what we must do to preserve the Christian foundations of this country. We need people to understand what it means to be living for Jesus Christ. So wonderful to have Cedra join us today. So now, okay, well, first of all, if you're wanting to call in, you can. Call lines are open at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. And so we talked a little bit about this whole thing with Jim Acosta, and I kind of got some back channel on it that there is a Fifth Amendment type problem with not having a process by which you would revoke someone's pass. So I want to explain this as best as I can understand. Now, I'm of the mind that you don't need a specific process by which to suspend someone, because there's a natural understanding of what is good behavior and what isn't. But most often we find that in organizations of any kind, they have their policies and procedures laid out in a manual so that someone can not accuse them of treating them differently. They can say, well, this is the way that this process works. You're warned again, you're maybe counseled individually, and then you have your first disciplinary incident will occur. And this is something that is routine in corporations and businesses. Anyone that has employees, you need to have a policy manual. It protects you against lawsuits. But in this case, we're talking about the White House press corps. And if this ruling is to be understood at all, what it is essentially saying is that Jim Acosta cannot be denied access to the press briefing. He has a right to a hard pass, which then brings about the question of whether or not I am owed a hard pass. I certainly would prefer to be a hard pass holder. I've described here on the program the times that I've been to the White House since President Trump has been in office. And on each of those occasions, well, it's a difficult process to get in, admittedly. But on one occasion, the most recent one, when I went earlier this year and we were meeting with a White House staffer to talk about the blueprint from Project 21, there was a a foreign dignitary in town. I believe it was the leader of Monaco. He and his wife were in town. And so all of the different entrance points around the White House compound were sealed off to direct everyone to one entrance point. So we ended up walking 1.5 miles around the complex from, basically we hit 3 of the points trying to get in. And when we reached the exterior, so you have to get through the first checkpoint, which is just the basic general checkpoint, and he has a computer there, and he types your name in as it appears on your driver's license. And if you do not have the authorization typed in exactly as it appears on your driver's license, and you type that in yourself when you apply for the pass, then you're denied. So one person in our party was denied and left at that first gate. The rest of us proceeded on to the main entry point that stands between you and the actual access to the White House from that corner. And again, they typed our information in, and then we had to go through the process of, you take off your purse, whatever you've got, you have to leave your umbrella. They screen all of your items. It's like going through TSA. You walk through, and then they give you a pass, and it is not a day pass. It's just a temporary pass that gives you access basically until someone tells you to get out, or until you're done with the meeting and the person you're there with walks you to that gate, and then there's nowhere else for you to go. Now, contrast what I just described to you, which was a lengthy process. It took us 20 minutes to get through that. And we were early. Even after walking 1.5 miles, we still arrived early. That's how early we left to try to get there. We still got through all of that, and we're 20 minutes early, which, if you guys know me at all, you know that is a feat of amazing proportion. Hard pass holders, while we were at the exterior first checkpoint, simply lifted it and breezed on through. Simply lift your hard pass and breeze through. Interior gate, stick it under the window, breeze through. I want one of those. So obviously now I'm on a mission to get what's owed to me. I'm owed a hard pass, and I want one, and I'm going to apply for one and see if I can get it. If Jim Acosta gets one, if everyone gets one, then I certainly want one too. We'll be back with the last segment of the show. Stay there.
Hi, this is Steve Tiber with 8 Days of Hope. We've been all over the country helping disaster victims who lose everything.
It's truly a blessing. I really don't have the words to express.
And yet they see a glimmer of hope when a volunteer shows up.
Building the home, that's the second reason we're here. The number one reason is to share the gospel and give them hope.
It's everything that's right in America. I mean, it really represents the best that we have to offer.
That's one of the main reasons for doing it, is being able to be the hands and feet of Jesus and coming out and working with so many wonderful volunteers.
I just feel like it's important in this day and age to teach a child how to serve.
Please go to our website, 8daysofhope.com, and click on Get Involved. Submit your email address, and the next time we go anywhere with a disaster, we'll invite you to come along as well.
I love coming in the job room because you can see these pieces of paper. They aren't just a piece of paper. Right. It's a family that's hurting, and it's a gospel opportunity.
I just thank God, for this moment. I'll be back in my home, and I know it's going to be awesome.
Come love others with 8 Days of Hope.
This is Franklin Graham, and I've got an idea for Christmas, and that is to fill a shoebox for a child somewhere in the third world. These children live in poverty, and what I'm asking you to do is just take a shoebox and fill it with items for a child. Put toys, school supplies, and then we give these boxes out, and we do this in Jesus' name. And put your picture in there. Put your address in there. Maybe the kids can write you back, but we need you to be a part of it. God bless you. Thank you so very much.
Visit SamaritansPurse.org/OCC to get involved.
I would use, and I burst into tears because I just couldn't stop it on my own. So I got into Teen Challenge, and it opened the door for God to come in and do the work in me that I couldn't do in myself.
If you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, Adult to Teen Challenge can help. There are centers across the country, and you can find the one nearest you at 855-END-ADDICTION or at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
The Dean's List with Janice Dean.
David Verberg is a champion sprinter who won the 400-meter relay at the 2016 Rio Olympics. He recently posted a video of himself sprinting into a busy intersection to save a tortoise. Dave had been driving down the Florida highway when he saw the slow-moving shell. After swerving his car to avoid hitting the creature, he made a U-turn, parked in a turning lane, and ran into the street so he could scoop it into his arms and run back to his vehicle. David told Runner's World magazine, "My shoes were untied and loose, so as I started running, I thought, this is a terrible idea." David, who is a self-proclaimed animal lover, along with being a world-famous sprinter, guesses that it was a gopher tortoise, which is protected under the Endangered Species Act. He says it happens all the time in Florida. David, thank you for your quick thinking, your quick sprinting. I'm sure the tortoise is grateful too. Janice Dean, Fox News.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
An Israeli political philosopher named Yaakov Talmon once put it this way: the state of the Jews has become the Jew of the states. What that means to me is criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitism. Criticism of Israel's existence, denying Israel the right to exist, calling Israel the Zionist entity, that is anti-Semitism. That is a classical continuity of thousands of years of symbolizing the Jew. So using that kind of language places you in very uncomfortable company. That kind of language can come today from the far left. It can come from white supremacists. It can come from Islamist extremists. It can come from many sources. But all of those groups converge on one idea: the Jew remains humanity's great problem.
So that is an author and saying that criticizing Israel's existence, denying its right to exist, is modern anti-Semitism. And he said you find it on the left, and you find it on from white supremacists on the far right. And he is absolutely calling them out and saying, you know, it's not okay. I think it's past time that liberals address the anti-Semitism, that they don't just allow it to be present, they promote it. That person that I was mentioning a bit ago in the election back in, she's gotten elected to replace rabid anti-Semite Keith Ellison. She wears the head wrap and all that, and she said before she was elected that she did not support the BDS movement, the divestiture movement, where you target all things that have anything to do with Israel and you boycott them. But now she's come out and said she does support it. In other words, she lied to get elected, and now she's showing her true face. And she's not even doing Barack Obama style activity where you wait a few years and let people feel comfortable that they were told the truth and then lie to them. No, she's just like, yeah, I said I really didn't want to, but I did. Yeah, I support BDS. She flies the Palestinian flag, for goodness sakes. So this is where we are right now. Call lines are open at 866-963-2037. So we've got that, obviously. And just the depressingness of it's depressing to hear people who are always talking about how they're tolerant, they believe in this, they believe in that. You know, you have to tolerate everything. What they really mean is you have to do what I say. You have to do what I say. You have to believe what I believe, and everything else can go by the wayside. I'm only looking for tolerance when it's tolerance for things that I tell you need to tolerate. But tolerating Israel, not something I need to do, because the cause du jour for me is liking Palestinians. As if there are no other Arab states that could absorb the Palestinian people. But notice, just like the people coming from south of our border, when offered asylum in Mexico, they say, no, we want real opportunity. In other words, it's not good enough for us to improve our living conditions and our circumstances, because Mexico, as horrible as it is far better than Honduras or El Salvador. And Mexico enjoys a robust trading relationship with the United States. And it's possible, in theory, that a bunch of people showing up here or there in Mexico from Honduras and El Salvador, in other words, new workers, could prompt American companies to put some more American jobs south of the border. I mean, it's entirely possible. But these people are saying, no, we want to come work under the table in America. We want to be in America. You can offer anything that you want, but Mexico isn't good enough for us. We've had enough of these third world countries. We want to live in a first world country. And America, which is full to the brimming with racists, had better let us in. Just watch the video footage of these people talking. They contradict themselves right off the bat. Well, there are criminals in here in the migrant caravan, and we want to be protected from that. And if America doesn't let us in, we're going to enter illegally, thereby making themselves criminals. We don't want to stay in Mexico because Mexico has offered us asylum, but it's not as good as America. And America is full of racists, but America has to let us in. America has to let our little cafe au lait brown tails in here because we need to be in there. Yeah, I said it. Who's going to say something to me about talking about what color they are? Please, cue up. Please tell me something about being of the permanent tan of any sort. You can't. So don't try me. Don't try me today. My problem with this whole scenario is that these are not refugees. They're not asylum seekers. They're economic migrants. If I could, I'd move to Switzerland. They'd call me an economic migrant, by the way, because in order to get citizenship in Switzerland, you have to have a few things going on for you. And since I don't have a job offer in Switzerland, they would say to me, oh, you just want to come here for better economic prospects. And I would say, well, I mean, my economic prospects are pretty good, but I mean, if you're saying that I want to live there because I like Switzerland, then yeah, that's what you're talking about. I do like it. I like it. I've been there. When we were there, I enjoyed it a lot. It was super nice. And that's the way these people feel about coming here to America. And it's got nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with culture, a lack of assimilation, and the way someone comes in. You know how it's well known. The way that you begin a thing is probably the way it's going to end. And if you come in here illegally, you're probably going to commit crimes while you're in here. You're probably going to steal people's identities. That's one of the main things that people who are here illegally do, is they steal the identity of Americans. So now we're watching, and I want to pivot over to this last subject. I want to discuss this on out of the program here, and it is how we're watching the Democrats eat their own. Now, this is one of the things that it was good to hear one of our callers talking about how we don't want to get too gleeful when we see our enemy getting their just desserts, but it is instructive to watch how these people are treating each other. And so, you know, have you heard? Marcia Fudge is apparently considering a run against Nancy Pelosi for the speakership. Now, here's why this is important. Black people are a full 1/4 of the voting population of Democratic voters. And those voters, that 25%, want a turn at running the House of Representatives. And they think this time is as good of a time as any for them to make their run. And they feel like Marcia Fudge, who is a 10-year Democratic congresswoman from suburban Cleveland, and also the former head of the Congressional Black Caucus, the Do Nothing Caucus, that she'd be a good person to take over from Nancy Pelosi. Now, here's why this is a crazy idea. Nancy Pelosi has all the power. Y'all know I'm not a fan of Nancy Pelosi, but I like to call a spade a spade. I like to call the situation on the ground, the conditions on the ground as they are. I don't like when people try to act like things are better than they are or worse than they are. Just call it what it is. Nancy Pelosi has all the power. She knows where the dead bodies are buried. She has the fundraising apparatus, and she's used to bending the other Democrats to her will. She's been doing it for decades now. Now, Marcia Fudge may be a formidable knife fighter, but she's no Nancy Pelosi, and she's not going to raise the same dollars. And that is what is going to be the big fight between the Democrats, because they're very much into the ideology that, well, if a black person challenges you on the ideology thing of victimhood, your little hierarchy of victimhood, the white lady has to defer to the black lady because the black lady is a person of color. And so that's how they kind of decide, well, who's going to get what. But underneath all of that wrangling that they do is the reality on the ground of who can raise the most money, who can bring the most money in when we need it from our mega donors, because they're going to have a race to run in 2020. And that race just started a couple of days ago. So Marcia Fudge has been quoted as saying, when you look at the people who support this party the most, they're women and African Americans, especially African American women. We keep talking about diversity, but there's nothing diverse about the top of our ticket. We have to not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. So instead of talking about how much money she can raise or how she's the better candidate than Nancy Pelosi, how she better reflects the values of the Democrats who are currently going to be taking over the House of Representatives, instead of talking about her ideas, her policy accomplishments, her maybe newness to the game, a fresh face, the only reason she feels she should replace Nancy Pelosi is because she has a permanent tan and Nancy Pelosi does not. And so what's delicious about this is that when they say these things to us, we scoff. We're like, no, we don't give jobs to people just because they're black. We don't give jobs to people just because they're a woman or a man. We don't do that. We pick the best person. We say that over and over and over again. We pick the best person. We pick the best person. And the Democrats' response is racist, bigot. You don't know anything. You just hate people. You hate blacks. You hate women. That's what they say. And now here, this woman, Marcia Fudge, is using the same argument that they use unsuccessfully on conservatives on her own kind. It's like she's laid Nancy Pelosi out on one of those big carving tables, and she's like, come on in, everybody. It's time to eat. We're going to eat our own. We're going to take her down, and we're going to do it in the name of diversity. So it's not just about Pelosi, but they want a change in leadership, apparently. Now, Marcia Fudge has support beyond the Black Caucus. Seth Mouton of Massachusetts said, look at the amazing number of women who ran and won on the platform of change. People of color, women veterans. We need to answer that call for change, a change in leadership. Congressional Black Caucus passed a vote of no confidence in Tom Perez. So it's not just Nancy who's on the chopping block. The latest sign of lingering bad blood between lawmakers on Capitol Hill and the DNC. According to CBC members, Benny Thompson, Democrat, Mississippi, the incoming chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, we could just have at least 15 minutes giggling and laughing about how ludicrous that is. I mean, this guy is totally unqualified to head up that committee. We might as well just order in a clown car full of actors who are part-time clowns in full clown gear and put them in charge of this committee. Anyway, so they're saying here that he's the incoming chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee. They started a debate over the National Party's superdelegate policy, which led to a motion of no confidence in Perez. The Black Caucus wanted Keith Ellison to do that job. Of course, Keith Ellison's not in Congress anymore. He didn't run. He opted to run for Attorney General or something of the state where he lives. So what's happening here is that there's going to be a purge. No one in Democratic leadership of the House, Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, Clyburn, none of them are under the age of 70. New leadership of the Democrats is going to be more diverse, non-white, better educated, which is indoctrinated, and Bernie Sanders-esque. He may have lost the nomination 2 years ago, but his Democratic Socialists are the new Democrats. This is a horrible development for America because our system is predicated upon everyone who's in it being pro-America, being for this country, understanding our Constitution, understanding national sovereignty, having an appreciation for our military, loving the citizens, the rural ones, the city ones, the suburban ones, the towny ones. The people who run this country should love Americans. We now have fully 50% of the country that is giving its allegiance to a party that not only doesn't love all Americans, but doesn't love America. They're the ones behind the open borders flunkies who are currently creating a second caravan of 100,000 people to assault our southern border. These people are a danger to the republic. and they're about to purge out the last vestiges. Crazy as those vestiges are at 70 years old, Crazy Pants, Maxine Waters, and all the rest of them, they're not as crazy or deadly as this new younger group who are coming out of public schools where they've been taught that America is the great Satan, racism, everything bad, and coming out of colleges and universities where they've been taught that the only thing that's going to fix America is to completely remake it in the image of a socialist state from across the water, some European nation for which they only can have socialism because we pay for their military. You know, one of the most ludicrous statements, as an aside, that we heard this week was the French president actually opining, and the German chancellor chiming in too, about them having their own military. They can't afford it because we currently borrow a whole bunch of money so we can provide defense for them. The minute they raise up their own army under their own steam and have to borrow their own money to do it, well, first of all, it frees us up a ton. I mean, it just frees us up. We would have to have far less military presence around the world if they would just take care of themselves. They're not going to do it because they don't want to borrow that money. They'd rather we do it, which is why Trump holds all the cards. We got to pray about this. We have to pray for common sense and decency to return to our American citizen cohorts on the left. We need a two-party system, but it has to be full of God-fearing good Americans, not these socialists that are rising up at present. All right, that's the show. It's the weekend. God bless from the heartland. Enjoy your night and the weekend, and happy Thanksgiving to you.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family